Ronald, Ronnie, and Doreen Jack both grew up on the south side of Burns Lake, Prince George, British Columbia. Not much is known about Ronnie's younger years, however, according to one of Doreen's sisters, Marlene, their family life was far from average. Marlene claimed in an article published on the Vancouver Sun website that she and her sisters had suffered, quote, emotional and sexual abuse when they were children and adults. They attended one of Canada's infamous residential schools, where they were subject to a string of violent abuse and grew to fear authority. Marlene was homeless for a time, though it is unclear whether Doreen was too. Other than this, not much else is known about the pair, nor their other sister, Laureen. Ronnie and Doreen eventually got married and had 2 sons together, Russell Fabian, who was born on February 28, 1980, and Ryan Paul, who was born on July 26, 1985. The family of 4 were of the Chislata Carrier Nation, and by 1989 were living at an address on Strathcona Avenue in the south side of Burns Lake, Prince George. By this time, Ronnie and Doreen were both 26 years old, with their eldest son, Russell, being 9 years old and Ryan being 4. By August of 1989, the Jacks fell on hard times. Ronnie had been out of work for a while due to a back injury, and as a result, the family struggled financially and were living off state welfare. Their struggling finances took a huge toll on the entire family. All they wanted, just like any other family, was to have a stable enough income to care for their 2 boys. On the evening of August 1st, 26-year-old Ronnie visited a neighbourhood pub, the First Litre pub, located a few blocks away from the family home. After having had a couple of drinks, Ronnie struck up a conversation with an unknown male who proposed a job offer to Ronnie. The unknown man was described by 2 witnesses as having a pale complexion, aged somewhere between 35 and 40 years of age, with reddish-brown side-parted hair, measuring just below his ears, a moustache and a short beard. He was estimated to be between 6 feet to 6 feet 6 inches tall and weighing between 200 and 275 pounds, being described by these witnesses as, quote, hefty but not fat. Whilst in the pub, the man was wearing a cap, a red checkered shirt, faded blue jeans, a blue waist-length nylon jacket, and a pair of work boots with leather fringes over the toes. This strange man in the pub offered Ronnie and his wife Doreen some work at a logging ranch located 5 or so miles past Bednesty, near to Clucas Lake, situated around 40 kilometres west of the family's home in Prince George. The man offered Ronnie a job bucking logs and offered Doreen a cook's job in the kitchens at the site. The man also allegedly told Ronnie that the camp housed a daycare facility which could be used to care for their 2 sons, 9-year-old Russell and 4-year-old Ryan, whilst both parents worked their respective jobs. Ronnie was tempted by this offer, but he told the mysterious individual that he didn't own a vehicle in which to drive to the camp, but it was at this point that the man offered to drive the Jack family to the logging ranch that very night himself, but on one condition. The man told Ronnie that time was of the essence and that if they didn't leave that night for the ranch, the offer would be off the table. The prospect of 2 stable incomes and daycare for their children seemed almost too good to be true for the struggling Jack family. They were desperate for their finances to improve for the sake of their sons' futures, so Ronnie didn't think twice about accepting the man's offer. Upon returning home with the unidentified man driving him there, Ronnie spoke to his 26-year-old wife Doreen about the man's proposal. Both were excited at the prospect and couldn't believe their luck, that finally their finances were going to improve for the better. The couple decided to pack up their belongings alongside their 2 sons, though they only packed enough to last them a few weeks. It appeared that the family had every intention of returning when the job was complete. According to Ronnie's brother and parents, both of whom he called at around 11:16 p.m. and 1:15 a.m. respectively, whilst packing up the family home, the Jacks were only meant to be out of town for around 10 to 14 days on the logging ranch, as their eldest son, Russell, was due to start a new school year after their return. Little did Ronnie's brother and his mother, Mabel, know that this would be the last time they would ever hear from the Jack family. They locked up their residence under the veil of darkness, got into the mysterious man's dark 4-wheel pickup truck, and drove away at approximately 1:30 a.m. on August 2nd. The family of 4 were never seen or heard from again. On August 25th, after the Jacks failed to return home from the logging ranch, their extended family reported them as missing persons. The Jacks hadn't been in any contact with family members since they left their home 3 weeks prior, and this in itself was a huge concern for their loved ones. Ronnie himself was extremely close to his mother, and according to one source, phoned her almost every night. Something was awry. A search for the family was conducted by Prince George RCMP on the ground and in the air, where they scoured a number of properties and land sites in nearby Burns Lake. Hundreds of interviews were carried out by investigators, talking to friends, family, neighbours and local residents, but unfortunately nothing of significance came to light. There were absolutely no clues as to why the family left their home in such a hurry, nor any evidence to indicate where they had gone. Police visited a number of logging camps in the area, though interestingly, none appeared to be hiring at that time, and nobody at these logging camps had seen anyone resembling the Jack family following their bizarre vanishing. The case quickly went cold, with no leads or tips helping investigators trace the Jack family down. That was until they received a phone call in January of 1996. At 8:33 a.m, a man from Stony Creek called the Vanderhoof Police Department, simply stating that the Jack family were buried, quote, at the south end of Gordy's ranch, before quickly hanging up. Authorities tried to track down the male individual who made the call, appealing in newspapers for the man to come forward, but to no avail. The 10-second original call was analysed by professionals at the University of British Columbia 2 months later in March of 1996, and they managed to trace the call back to a residence in Vanderhoof. Allegedly, a house party was being held when the call was made to police. However, it is unclear if the caller was ever identified as a person of interest, or if the call was deemed a hoax of some kind. An anonymous letter was also allegedly sent to a third party, but whether the same individual was involved here remains a mystery. The contents of the letter has not been revealed to the public, as the RCMP don't want their investigation to be compromised in any way. The most likely theory is that the Jack family were murdered by the unidentified man, though if so, why? What was their motive? Were the Jacks lured into some sort of trap? But if so, once again, what for? Were they abducted and somehow ended up in an illegal trade of some kind? Foul play is deemed very likely in this case, though others have speculated that perhaps the foursome wanted to start their lives anew, or were perhaps involved in a tragic car accident. However, because of the very little information known about the pickup truck they were last seen in, tracing the vehicle is almost impossible. The Jacks had no reason to run away from their old life other than their financial troubles. They were reportedly very close-knit with their relatives, and despite their money troubles, seemed to be in a good place. The only theory that seems likely here is that the Jacks somehow met with foul play on the night they disappeared. What happened to them following this, we simply don't know. Police managed to identify a number of potential sites in and around Prince George where the Jack family could have been buried, the latest being in August of 2019. Authorities excavated land by a property on the Sycas First Nation Reserve, located south of Vanderhoof. However, despite investigating several of these sites, nothing of significance has ever been found in relation to the Jacks' disappearances. Over the years, investigators have stacked 60 boxes full of documents relating to this baffling case, though as time has progressed, the trail has remained cold. A renewed appeal for information was launched by the Prince George RCMP in September of 2019, in the hopes that anyone with any information would come forward. A sketch of the suspect last seen with the Jack family was composed using two witness statements collected in 1989 and 1990 respectively, with authorities hoping that anyone who recognises this male individual will eventually come forward. Some speculate that the suspect resembles David Picton, brother of the infamous pig farmer serial killer Robert Picton, who killed between 6 and 49 women between 1983 and 2002, feeding their remains to the pigs on his farm. David had a previous criminal record of sexual assault and threatened to kill a 55-year-old woman, but there is no evidence to suggest that he was involved in this particular case, other than the resemblance between the suspect sketch and David himself. Another potential suspect was Bobby Jack Fowler. He was a serial killer and rapist who operated in the States as well as Canada between 1969 and 1995, mainly committing his crimes along Highway 16, running between Prince George and Prince Rupert in Canada. This stretch of road is infamously known as the Highway of Tears, as many young women, mainly of Indigenous origins, have disappeared or have been murdered along this highway since 1970, some of which were victims of Fowler. Rather interestingly, Bobby frequented the First Litre pub, where Ronnie Jack met the mysterious man who offered him and his wife a new life in August of 1989. However, Bobby didn't match the description of the suspect, though if Bobby had perhaps been present at the bar that same night, there's every possibility that he may have overheard Ronnie's conversations with the man, and he somehow met them further down the road somewhere, perhaps killing them. But it is unlikely that we will ever know for sure unless the bodies of the Jack family are recovered, or any significant evidence is uncovered in the future. For now, this case leaves us with far more questions than answers. At the time of his disappearance, Ronnie Jack was 26 years of age, standing at 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighing around 150 pounds. He had black hair and brown eyes and was of native origins. His wife, Doreen, was also 26 years old at the time of the family's disappearances. She was 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighed approximately 111 pounds, also with black hair and brown eyes. She was also of native origins. The couple's eldest son, Russell, was 9 years old and stood at 4 feet tall, weighing around 90 pounds. His younger brother, Ryan, who was 4 at the time, stood at 3 feet tall and weighed 55 pounds. Both children, like their parents, had black hair and brown eyes. If the Jack family are still out there somewhere, Ronnie and Doreen would both be in their late 50s, their eldest son Russell being 42 years old, and their youngest, Ryan, would be 37. Losing one member of your family is heartbreaking, but losing 4 is beyond all comprehension. All Ronnie and Doreen's remaining relatives want is answers and for justice to be served after over 30 years of agonising suffering. Doreen's sister Marlene has continued to keep the case alive in a bid to pursue the truth, even testifying and speaking about her sister's family at the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls in 2017. She told the inquiry that she was, rather shockingly, told not to speak to the media about the Jack case, and that if she did, the police would not give her any more updates regarding the investigation. The Commissioner praised Marlene for coming forward and talking about her difficult childhood and adolescence, and the heartbreaking disappearance of her sister and her family. Marlene doesn't want her sister, brother-in-law, and nephew's case to be put on the back burner and forgotten. Their lives mattered, and Marlene won't stop in trying to find out what happened to them. Ronnie's mother, Mabel Jack, also spent countless hours searching for her son and his family along with her husband, spending all of their savings on looking for the foursome, but unfortunately to no avail. An entire family doesn't just vanish without somebody somewhere knowing what happened to them. Their loved ones are desperate to find out what happened on that fateful night in August of 1989, and whatever the outcome, want Ronnie, Doreen, Russell and Ryan to come home to them so that they can finally be laid to rest. After 33 years, this tragic and mysterious case remains unsolved.